I think we'll kick off the session. Just wanted to make sure that everyone can see the screen that's up. And with that, we'll start. So first of all, thank you for attending today's session. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining from. Today, we're going to have a bit of a discussion and talk about cyber recovery, but of course that kind of ties into protection and data protection as well. Before we get started proper with the session, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you do have any questions, please feel free to enter them and type them into the Q&A box, and we'll get through to them hopefully if we have some time. And we're also recording the session, so there'll be the recording made available after the session as well. Okay, so to get started, joining me today is Nathan Clark, who is the Senior Technical Account Manager at Arcserve. Nathan, so talk to me, tell me, when did you start at Arcserve, or when did you first get involved with data protection and backup?
Yeah, hi Armon, thanks so much, and afternoon to everyone that is on the call. So my history with Arcserve actually goes back longer than I care to remember some days. But I actually started with Arcserve back when Computer Associates owned the platform in 1998, and spent a number of years in various roles in support and fly out, fly in troubleshooting and customer account management and all of those sorts of things. And spent a number of years with a few other vendors, and recently back in 2022 rejoined Arcserve now as an independent company. So lots of experience. My entire career has been spent looking after people's data, protecting it, providing availability solutions and DR and all of those sorts of things. And yeah, really focusing on the protection of systems, of corporate data, of people's livelihood when it comes to all of their business information.
Excellent.
Yeah, sorry, Armon. I was just going to say, but I guess the one thing that we're focused on now is really, with me particularly, is bringing in 20 plus, pushing 30 years of experience, and helping mostly some of the same customers I supported back in 1998, but also looking at a number of new customers and all of that, and making sure that everyone really understands what Arcserve's about today and gets the most out of our solutions. And remind me, Armon, we didn't cross paths whilst we were at Arcserve, but you were also at Arcserve going back a few years.
I was, yeah. So I was at Arcserve, if memory serves correctly, I think I started in 2013, and I was there for about four and a bit years. So yeah, it was an interesting time. Most of my time in the IT world has been mainly around the hardware piece with server and storage. And then, in those roles, I did also kind of cater for data protection and business continuity type solutions. And that involved actually utilizing the old Arcserve software in some of those solutions. And then, yeah, made the jump to actually working at Arcserve for a little while, and saw a number of changes. Like you mentioned before, Arcserve kind of spinning out and becoming its own independent company as it is now. So a lot of interesting times that I stayed through or lived through back then.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, IT industry is a pretty small world, but it's all nice to go down memory lane. But let's kind of get to the core topic at hand today with cyber resiliency, and I guess how can Arcserve UDP help with that? But in order for us to understand that, what exactly is Arcserve UDP?
Yeah, cool. So thanks, Armon, and I'm glad you asked the question. Um, so as we can see from the slide on the screen, right, like Arcserve UDP has been around initially as Arcserve D2D back in 2010, and then converting to UDP name in 2014, which I believe you would have been part of that launch, and if I'm not mistaken. So it's
Yeah,
a lot of pedigree. It's been out for several years. One of the things that you will notice from this slide is that there were some longish gaps between software releases in the 2016 to 2019 era. What we have done is reinvigorated the development lifecycle. We've reinvigorated um, our sales teams and our support teams and our development teams to really focus on doing regular updates, regular releases, and really driving new technologies, new features, new functionality um, into the Arcserve UDP, or Unified Data Protection, as it's known with its long name. But UDP is now the flagship backup product within Arcserve. We are focusing very heavily on ensuring that the small mid business landscape, especially within Australia and New Zealand and the Pacific Islands, is well protected with an easy to use software that we can help reduce the total cost of ownership for our customers and leverage really good rock solid backup and restore performance. Armin, do
awesome.
we want to jump to the next slide?
Yes. Yeah. So let's talk about some of
Awesome.
that technology behind it.
Yeah, for sure. So these slides are a little bit of an introduction to, firstly, the technology that we have available to us within Arcserve UDP. So number one, we look at how do we actually access the console, and we have a couple of options available for our customers. We have our traditional on-premises console that runs on a Windows platform, either locally in a data center, but somewhere that is owned by the customer themselves. Um, the on-premises console that's been out since day one with UDP. More recently, in Arcserve UDP 9, we launched our cloud console. So that's been out for quite a while, and this brings a web-based GUI that enables us to have a slightly newer look and feel to Arcserve, but with the same features and functionality that we have with the on-premises console. But more importantly, it helps us to reduce some of the load and some of the resource requirements that the on-premises console can require, which means that we can get similar backups with less resources on a small business, for example. Um, Both of our consoles have what we call isolated user management, where the users that log into the backup don't necessarily mean to be the same users that are in the Active Directory domain and all of that. They can be, but they don't have to be. And what this means is that if there is a breach of some sort of the Active Directory or of the internal production systems, we don't necessarily have an impact into the backups because we're able to isolate the backups from production. That becomes very important in a recovery because it means that if production has been impacted for a variety of reasons, that we're not necessarily going to see that same impact in the actual backup environment. Um, we can also add to that role-based access control. So we're able to actually limit access based on the user. And this isn't about reducing the access from people that need certain access and being controlling in that sense. It's about reducing the chance that should an individual user's account be compromised, that the effort and the tasks that can be done with that account is also reduced. And again, admin accounts, for example, should only be used when absolutely necessary to perform admin tasks. Operation roles should be used for normal day-to-day business and those sorts of things. But we also have, on top of the role-based access control, we have multi-factor authentication. And this enables us to have effective controls that even if a user account is compromised and a password is compromised, that you do have that second factor authentication that should then prevent the actual access into the Arcserve environment. And that's very important. And that also ticks a large number of requirements when it comes to cyber insurance policies and all of those sorts of things, which are mandating more of these controls. Adding to that, we're not going to go into a massive amount of detail with licensing today. We can definitely talk to you about that one-on-one after today, but we do have a lot of different licensing options, and the purpose of our licensing is to be as flexible as possible for the business requirements. Adding to that, sorry, Armon, go on.
Just very quickly with the licensing. So correct me if I'm wrong. From a licensing standpoint, you have options for different editions of UDP, which cover different feature sets, as well as how it's licensed in terms of what you want to back up.
Correct. So, and adding to that, we've recently introduced subscription licensing so that we can either back up on a subscription base, sorry, license, not back up, license on a subscription basis or a perpetual with maintenance. You're right. We can license either per sockets, we can license per machine, we can license per capacity. And really, as part of my job, particularly in the technical side of things, is to help make sure that the licensing matches the environment and that we get as flexible as possible with that. On the editions front, we have 3 different editions of the licensing, starting from a basic edition at a price point to match, through to our premium editions, which have significantly more features and functionality. And then there's obviously a price point for that one as well. So lots of flexibility. The big takeaway from this is that we have a license that fits every business and every model that that business requires. I guess the next thing to look at, and this is something that is very close to your heart, Armon, is the being able to use what we call isolated backup hardware. And effectively what we mean here is we mean Arcserve works incredibly well when the backup hardware itself is not part of the domain, is not part of production, is isolated from the production storage and workloads and those components, which enable Arcserve to step in the time of need when production may have failed or have an impact of some sort, that the backup server, the backup infrastructure being isolated means that we're able to do that recovery when production is lost. Adding to that, if we look at some of the cool tech that we have, all of our backups are block level, so we're not backing up files, we're backing up the disk system underneath the files. We support incremental forever backups, which means we don't write the same data twice. And we also support source-side global deduplication. Now, source-side global dedupe means that coupled with incremental forever and coupled with block level means that our incremental backups are incredibly small. Small backups mean fast backups, which means that we're able to run backups more frequently. And this means that the amount of data loss a customer may experience in the event of an outage can be substantially reduced through running lots of frequent backups throughout the day, which are by design very small and consuming lower amounts of storage. All of our backups can be compressed, they can be encrypted, and we also support multi-site replication so that we can replicate our backups from either one site to many sites. We can do one site to another site and then to another site. So there's a lot of flexibility in where we can replicate our backups, including replicating our backups to offsite NAS, to cloud targets in various platforms. And we also have a very flexible disaster recovery or business continuity, cyber recovery. There's lots of different words about these days, but we've got very flexible recovery options.
So that's going to be really important. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail in a couple of slides' time.
Yeah, we sure are.
Yeah, in terms of what we're actually protecting, though, let's take a quick look at what that actually will cover.
Yeah, great, thanks. Now, if we look at it from a protection view, we have on the left-hand side of the slide, we've got what we can back up. And then on the right-hand side, we've got where those backups can go. So effectively, what we're looking at is in the agentless or the virtual machine layer of backups, we support backing up Hyper-V, Nutanix, and VMware virtual machines without the need for an agent on them. We're backing them up at the actual hypervisor level. From an operating system point of view, we support Linux and Windows. And we support Windows and Linux on both an agent-based, so we install an agent on the machine, and also from an agentless point of view, where we have the virtual machines running on one of the supported hypervisors. In saying that, we also have support for network-attached storage. And the network-attached storage is effectively an SMB or an NFS share. And those shares then enable us to be able to restore, or more importantly, back up NAS devices, network shares, NFS mounts, all of those sorts of components within a customer environment, which then enable us to again provide a complete solution for protection. Adding to that, as part of our agent and agentless technology, we support the backing up of Windows Active Directory, Exchange databases, SQL databases, SharePoint and Oracle databases. And there's a lot of flexibility on the restore of those as well, where we can restore individual databases and all of that sort of stuff. If we look at it from a protection point of view and where we actually store the backups, we have the capability to store the backups on direct attached storage. We have the ability to store the backups on network attached storage. And we have the capability to write the backups to AWS S3. Azure Blob, Google Cloud, and also Wasabi storage. So we've got lots of the cloud targets, we've got the NAS targets, and also we've got the direct attached targets.
Right, and I'm guessing the the object storage for cloud, they'd be ideal for some of those longer term storage where you might need the data but don't have to necessarily access it or recover from it super quick.
That's correct. And it's more around that lower cost storage to keep backups for a longer period. But again, equally, we do have capability that if you have a larger server with a large amount of disk on it for direct attached, we can have a centralized repository where the backups get replicated to your own large storage, either on a NAS or direct attached, which will then provide that longer term capability as well. And the one thing that I haven't got in this screen is we also support exporting the backups to Arcserve backup and tape, which can also be a low cost, truly off-site location where we can actually export the backups to tape.
And not to mention a real immutable storage.
That's correct. 100%.
Yep. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, we know what we're protecting. We know a little of the technology behind it. We've done our backups. Something's happened. What do we do? What can we, or how can we recover? How can we get our environment back online?
Yeah, again, and this is obviously the important part of what we're talking about, right? So the main thing here is talking through our different recovery things. Now, I am mindful of where we're sitting time-wise. Can we just have a quick time check? Because I do have a habit of talking a little bit more than the time allows sometimes.
We were okay on time. I'll definitely move us along if we tend to go.
Perfect. Thanks, mate. All right. So the key things that we're looking at here are our assured recovery and assured security. So what this gives us is this gives us capability to provide a level of assurance that our backups will work. So the assured recovery side of it is predominantly around for our backups and testing our backups in an automated fashion. Once those backups have been tested in an automated fashion, we're then able to know that those backups will work. If we look at it from an assured security point of view, we're then able to have the ability to scan our backups before a restore to identify if there's any viruses or malware or those sorts of things lurking on the backup, which then enable us to prevent the that malware from spreading in the event of a restore. The cool pieces of our tech, though, come in the actual recovery pieces themselves. So if we look at the main components of our recovery platform, we have what we call virtual standby. Now, virtual standby is effectively the ability to do a staged restore of the backups when the when you're actually running your backup. So what you do is I use the terminology, for every backup you do an equal but opposite restore, and you actually restore those backups into a powered off staged virtual machine. Now, that powered off state.
Sorry, I was just going to say, so effectively, once the virtual standby is done, should something happen, it's just a matter of turning that VM on.
That's exactly how it works. Yeah. So you can have this standby virtual machine ready to go in Azure, AWS, Google, as well as Hyper-V, VMware, Nutanix, and those things. So we're able to do a very structured recovery from backups. It's not replication. That then enables us to reduce by a significant margin the number of hours or minutes that a server can take to come back online, because it is purely just a matter of powering on that virtual machine. We have a different level. That's not necessarily for everyone. And we do have a second level, which is what we call instant virtual machine. Instant virtual machine is a good option for some machines in most circumstances. And what this means is that we will actually power on that virtual machine from the backup image. And we can then run that virtual machine from the backup storage until a suitable time comes up that we can then move that virtual machine to production. And that can be a game changer when it comes to a server failure in the middle of a business day, especially an important period of a business day, that we can bring that back. Again, the other tech is pretty straightforward. We can do virtual machine restores. We can do bare metal recovery of physical servers. We can jump across to the other side where we can do your file and folder. We can do disk volume restores. We can mount a backup to a staging server to find files. And again, we can also do granular database and also Active Directory object restores as well.
Awesome. That's great. So we've got protection, we've got the tech, we know what we're recovering, but as far as the solution's concerned, what do we need? Like, we need some hardware, we need some software, are there different components? What do we need to get an environment up and running and protected?
Yeah, cool. So funny you should ask this, and I think this is probably the key of why we are all here today, is around about the components that Arcserve UDP needs, right? So at its very basic level, we need a server to drive the backups. That server is using best practice configurations. That server is going to be an isolated server. We saw that earlier. It's going to be a server that doesn't share production from storage or compute or RAM. And it's a completely isolated machine to help ensure that should production fail, your backups don't fail. In saying that, there's a lot of different builds that we have. And all of these builds are 100% dependent on the actual source data, the size of the environment, the size of the storage used in production. But the absolute basic of it, we have effectively some compute, the server. We need some fast disk to handle our deduplication algorithms. And the reason that needs to be on fast disk is it speeds up the backups. So the faster the backups, we remember we're already running pretty small backups. The faster they are, the more frequent we can run them. And then obviously we need somewhere to store the backups. So we'd always recommend storing backups locally first and then replicating somewhere else. We can also look at our disaster recovery side of things and actually have built into the backup server a location to run the virtual standby virtual machines temporarily in the event of a disaster until they can be moved back to production. So not only does your backup server store your backups, it can also be an integral part of your disaster recovery environment.
And similarly, where you've got, primary RPS there. So remind me, what's RPS?
Good question. So RPS is our recovery point server. And if we drill down a little bit further, in Arcserve terminology, we don't use the word backups, we use the word recovery points.
So we have our primary RPS where the initial backups or the recovery points are being stored. That's all being deduplicated and stored on that server. And then we have options. We can replicate that to a remote site. We can send a copy of that, replicate it to a disaster recovery site. And then at that disaster recovery site, we can stand up or we can create the virtual standby at the remote or disaster recovery site so that those VMs are ready to go at that secondary location.
100%. That's exactly what we can do. And we've got a lot of customers that are doing that exact configuration. And depending on the size of the customer, there's a large number of different server options that will support this. If you're only a small customer with a small amount of source data, it doesn't mean you need a large amount of infrastructure to achieve this. You can have the exact same business continuity experience as a large enterprise because of the way our technology works. It scales outwards so that a small customer, the configuration, the storage required, and all of that is very small. But the smarts of the technology, the features, the engine behind it is the same as a larger customer that then has a lot more infrastructure at their disposal.
Yeah, funny you should mention that, because that kind of leads us to what DiGiCOR has been doing, and working in association with yourself and Arcserve. We've actually been working on bringing a few ready, almost pretty much ready to run solutions based on some DiGiCOR built server platforms.
Yep.
So on that front, we've got initially here these four models that we're kind of starting with and going to market with, and right from the bat, you talked about small environments. If you've got a remote office or a branch office that has maybe one server, and you want to protect that machine, you don't have a whole lot of data. You might have a couple of terabytes of data, if even that. We have the MiniScale Tower. It's a compact 4-bay tower server that is running the Arcserve UDP 10 solution, the product on there. That has, like Nathan mentioned, it's got the deduplication capability, it has the replication capability, the ability to protect your VMs, your physical machines, the whole range.
Yeah,
If you have,
and
sorry,
Armon, sorry to jump in there, mate. Like, I really like this server because we hear quite often that you get either a smaller customer or you get a customer with remote sites located either throughout Sydney or across the country, or that sort of stuff, right? Um, and all too often we hear, oh, where are you doing your backups? Oh, they're just running on the same production storage. Again, it was too difficult for us to try and get extra servers, or try and find somewhere to put them, and all of this sort of stuff. So this server is great because what it gives us, right, from an Arcserve point of view, is it gives us the capability to do those local backups. But more importantly, right, now, remind me, Armin, that MiniScale tower, that's running all solid state disk, isn't it?
it is. So it's got 4 bays. So 3.5-inch bays are there, so you can run spinning disk. But the way we've configured these are all solid state. So you're getting the benefit of the fast backup, but most importantly, the fast restore capability. And especially in recent years, we've seen, obviously, industry wide, we've seen the price point of solid state drives continuously decrease, even with the falling Australian dollar, compared to what they were 10, 15 years ago. It's chalk and cheese. So it makes less sense unless you're looking for longer term retention, and that's something we'll talk about a bit later. But absolutely, these are ready to go with all solid state drives.
Cool. And just doubling down on that, right? So the thing that I like most of all about this solution, you're able to run virtual standby VMs on it, right? So you might have one or two servers at a remote site, and you might have a failure of some sort and they always happen at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, right? But you'll get that failure. Now, instead of having to do a restore, and the restore is going to be pretty great because of the solid state, but you could actually have some of the usable capacity already configured with those standby virtual machines ready to just be powered on. So you don't actually have to do a restore in this event. You can go, oh, production has failed. I've already got my backups restored running on that Windows Hyper-V on the backup server. All I have to do is power them on and my system's back up. And then you work on working out why production did fail. And then at some point, you can then fail back over to production. So it's a really, really powerful configuration wrapped up in a nice little compact tower.
Yeah, absolutely. And that trend kind of follows up. So if we're moving up, if you have something that is not, I mean, the mini tower is great. It's because it's compact size, it doesn't make a whole lot of noise. You can use it in an office environment where you don't necessarily have a dedicated rack or a server room. But as you're moving up, maybe you do have a rack, you have a server room, and you have some infrastructure running in your environment, you have the MiniScale Rack, which is great for protecting, slightly more VMs or more data. It's got 8 bays as opposed to 4, so we can effectively double the capacity that of backups that can be stored by this machine. So this model, and I think it's important to mention, all of these models have dedicated out-of-band remote management capabilities. So even if they are deployed remotely, if you need to kind of get visibility at a bare metal of what's happening on the machines, you have that ability as well.
Yeah, that's cool. And I must admit, like I love how it's like the great for smaller environments. The one thing I just thought of as you were talking, I would add to that, great for growing environments. So
Absolutely.
the 8 bay 2 unit server can start if you're got a small amount of data now, but you know that you're going to be increasing your footprint over the next few years. These environment, or sorry, this server can grow with your environment, and can scale with UDP to be quite a substantial amount of backup capacity, in a very low footprint server.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then, I mean, in a similar package, in terms of it being a 2U rack mountable system, we have the SmartScale 2U, which is a bit more of a flexible beast. It has some, I guess, the flexibility comes in being able to configure more capacity because you have more drive bays. It does have support for SAS or SATA spinning disks if you need that. But importantly, it also has support for being able to connect to a tape library or a tape loader, and being able to incorporate some tape backup if you needed that for whether it's compliance reasons, or even if it's just business policy to have some sort of additional storage, which is going to be mutable storage taken off site or whatever the case may be. And
Yeah,
with the higher capability in that SmartScale, it makes it a bit more capable in that virtual standby space. We can put, more
100%.
VMs on there. You can cater for, more memory. The CPUs are higher end, so we have a lot more flexibility in the role it plays in the not only data protection but the business continuity and DR role.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And when you have more CPU available, more RAM available, you have more disk available, you have more options available. So instead of running your virtual machines maybe at a reduced capacity just to get through the day or the week before you can go back to production, these servers are capable of actually potentially moving into production themselves. We wouldn't recommend it long term, but it can be used as that. Keep it there for a week or two. We definitely want to see offsite backups at this point, guys. We don't want to see you keeping all of your eggs production and backup in the same server, but it means that your business can function. And that's the important thing. Like, I hear horror stories of customers that are running, um, pick your brand NAS over smaller networks with older tech and all of this, and they go to do a full system restore, a full environment restore, and it goes slow. And everyone sits back and go, "Oh, why is it so slow?" And it's like, well, the moving parts that are here aren't conducive to a fast restore. The Arcserve technology on the backup sometimes is our worst enemy, because we use block level, we use dedupe, we use incremental forever. Our backups are really small, but the hardware can't work with a large restore event. Um, and that's the key here. We want to make sure that all of our customers, be they needing a 4 bay compact tower or a 12 bay 2 unit server, have the capability to bring their environment up and running as fast as possible using all of the Arcserve technology that is available to them. So what's this big beast at the end, mate? It's a 4-unit, 300 terabyte monster by the looks of it.
Yeah, or even more. Effectively, that one on the end, we're calling it our StoreScale 4U server. That has 36 bays. It is, as far as the internals are concerned, it's similar to the 12 bay, but with the additional storage that it can accommodate, it makes it ideal as a replication target. If you have multiple sites, you want to be able to replicate those sites back to a central location, or even if you just want to be able to keep more backups for a longer period of time, the additional storage that is afforded with the 36 bay server can accommodate that. And similar to the 12 bay server, we have options where you can connect it for tape backup if you need, even longer retention or more copies. But as far as, a server goes, more than capable of holding its own, just with a ton more disks. And again, like the 12 bay, we've got options for SAS, for SATA, for SSDs. We've got the capability to do the virtual standbys and instant VMs. We can load it out with a ton of RAM, a lot of cores with the CPU. So it makes it a very, very capable machine with its, I guess, target role being those more backups, longer retention, keep my data for longer.
Yeah, and I also looking into this, right? Like we've got a lot of partners, not so much customers, but partners that are using Arcserve UDP in a managed environment. So what those partners are doing is they're actually using the Arcserve UDP software, and they're backing up a lot of small business data within their own customer base themselves. These types of servers become vital because what they enable us to do on us, what they enable our partners to do is to be able to have a lot of customers potentially in various areas, probably with a 4-bay compact tower each, that are then replicating back to their own hosted environment. So rather than consuming cloud storage, which can get expensive depending on the environment and depending on the price structure of the cloud. Some organizations don't want to be in the cloud. They have an local storage policy, or they want to keep it inside a data center. And there's many different reasons. But these types of servers are really, really great because within Arcserve UDP, we can have a many-to-one replication, so we can have lots of sites replicating in, or we can store a large amount of data for a very long period of time as well.
Absolutely. We're getting close to our time, but we've got a couple of examples. Let's take a look at those, but maybe not spend too much time, but it'll give an idea of use cases for how these can be deployed.
Yeah, pretty cool. So now you go, mate. Off you go.
I was just going to say, starting with, we mentioned the MiniScale Tower, the compact tower is great for remote or branch office environments. So, that might be an office, you might be a small business, you might have, less than 10 people working in your office. You've got a single server that's running a few VMs, and you've got a few terabytes of storage that you need to protect. You mentioned before, you've got it as a separate machine. We've got it, out of band. We've got it protecting that data. And the specs on that server, can, depending on what you're running as your VMs, be capable of running as a virtual standby to run those machines in the event of something happening to that host.
100%. And the only thing I'd add there, right, is virtual standby, for example, is not a one-size-fits-all. Most businesses, you might have 5 VMs, but you have one VM that might be the brains behind the company, right? It might be that one machine that the business stops if that goes down. Where the other 4 machines, you can take a few hours to restore them or a day to restore them if the data size is larger. That you sit back and go, right, I can have my 5 VMs backing up to this machine, but that one vital machine in my environment, that gets virtual standby. And then a couple of machines might get instant virtual machine, and then the remaining machines will just be a stock standard restore.
Yep.
And this is a prime example of a really common Arcserve UDP customer.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then we kind of have something that might be more of a typical smaller environment. Customer has a server room, they have some rack space, whether it's in a data center or whether it's on-prem. We've got the ability to protect, again, if you've got a single VM there, we have that MiniScale Rack, which, like you said, can grow with the environment as the amount of data you need to protect increases. You can add storage to that protection.
Yeah. And that's the big thing here, right? Is being able to grow with the business, and with the data. So again, we've already talked about this quite a bit, but again, the main thing that I want everyone to see is that these servers are all designed around meeting the requirements for you, right? They're designed around the technology, the virtual standby, the instant virtual machine, the hourly backups, maybe more frequent if the environment allows us to, being able to do cloud replication if necessary, or replication to a central place. And all of these things is the same across all of these servers. The technology, the software is all the same. What we're looking at is different server capacities and server sizing that will then fit the budgets of all businesses.
And as we move up, again, we've got an example here. You've got maybe 3 VM hosts. You've got 20 VMs or even more perhaps. Again, we've got a solution, we've got a product that can meet that requirement. With the SmartScale, we then add the option of going into a tape target if you need that. We still have the ability to go to cloud if you need to. This is purely an example, right? So we're mentioning hourly backups, but UDP itself, what's the granularity of it? It was 15 minutes, I remember seeing on the slide.
Yeah, so it really depends on, and again, we're getting a little bit technical right now, but it really depends on the amount of change and the time that the backup takes, right? So the shorter the time the backup takes, the more frequently those backups can run. So hourly is my absolute default. We have got a lot of customers that can get 30 minutes or 15 minutes even from their backups, but it really depends 100% on, if you've got a very busy server, then maybe you'll get hourly. But if you've got a server that is vital, that has change, but it's not overly busy, and the backups only take 1, 2, 3, 5 minutes to run, then sure, you can run them every 15 minutes and make sure that at worst case, you only lose potentially 15 minutes worth of your data in the event of an outage.
And again, we mentioned the replication piece before. As an example here, we can have all of these different types of servers all replicating back. And look, it doesn't have to only replicate back to a StoreScale for you. You could have a MiniScale Tower replicating into a MiniScale Rack or a SmartScale to you. The flexibility is there. Like Nathan said, we can work with you to find a configuration that's going to make sense for your environment. And the flexibility that both these server platforms provide, but also importantly, the flexibility that Arcserve UDP provides is what makes that all possible. And we can work together to get that optimal outcome.
Yeah, flexibility is the key here, and it's great to see DiGiCOR. Again, Armon and I, we've spent quite a bit of time working through these different specs. As with every spec, there's always going to be a customer that comes in and says, oh, this doesn't exactly fit. And I guarantee that a quick phone call to Armon, and we'll, between the three organizations, we will have a spec that would fit your needs within a very short period of time. But the thing that I just really like the idea of being able to um, look at a capacity of an environment, a size of a customer, and go, look, here's a good starting point of where we need to be to help protect your backups and get those backups off primary storage, off an old NAS, off somewhere that is prone and, unfortunately, I have to say, highly likely to be impacted in the event of a breach or a failure of some sort. And that's the day that I don't want to see happen to any of you on this call or anyone at all. I want people that, should you have a production failure, you know that you've got your isolated backup hardware, you've got your replication in place as well, you've got your multi-factor authentication, you've got all of your protections in place, and it's definitely a deep breath moment and a bit of a sigh, but you know that your backups are safe, which means you can restore and your business can get back to doing what it does.
Yeah, don't let a business outage become the compelling event.
100%.
Look, with that, I think we pretty much reached the end of what we were planning to go through. If there are any questions, if you want to schedule a demo, if you want to see what it looks like, you want to see how quickly things can be restored, whether it be finding a file off a recovery point or doing a virtual machine restore, let us know. Get in touch with us. You can email our sales team. We'll be more than happy to schedule some sessions and some time to go through what your requirements are and build a solution that's going to be working for you based on what your business needs are. So yeah, with that, I'll leave that slide up.
Yeah, and just adding in there too, Armon, anyone that wants to see a demo of Arcserve UDP, we can all work together and schedule a demo session should you need it. And we also have evaluation license capabilities with Arcserve UDP so that we can actually trial it in your environment and show you how well it works with your own data in your own environment as well. And that's part of our standard process is making sure people like the solution, can see it before they use it, and go down that path.
Great. Yep. Definitely the evaluation bit, the proofs of concept, always very useful in these cases. So yeah, drop us a line, let us know. We're here to help. And these models that we went through the previous slides, they're already on our website at the moment. So if you're interested, you can take a look. But with that, I'd just like to thank you for attending. Thank you, Nathan, for joining us and imparting your knowledge with us.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks. Yeah, sorry, mate. Thank you for the invitation to come along, and also just again, apologies. I'm yet to work out why my screen and my my webcam is showing as on, but I'm not getting video through it. So I'm not 100% sure what went wrong early on in this call. But Armon, we might have a call after this and work out why my video failed at the early stages. I'm not 100% sure of what happened, to be honest. So apologies to everybody for that.
The webinar software needs some assured recovery, I think.
Love it.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. There will be a recording made available afterwards as well. But with that, thanks again, and hope to hear from you soon. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.